Welcome everybody to Motocross Action's ultimate two-stroke shootout. We have 3 KTM 150s, all identical specs except for some key parts. We have 3 different engine builders and 3 different suspension tuners, and we are going to put them all head to head in this KTM 150 shootout video. The story behind it, Pasha, he's really been the weight and the driving force behind the two-stroke revolution here in Southern California. He puts up thousands of dollars of his own money to promote two-stroke racing. He's got the Pasha 125 Open Series that he's been doing here in Southern California. Multiple races throughout the year where he puts up big money for two-strokes and he gets pros out there. He had 3 KTM 150s and he's decided, hey, let me give these engines to 3 different tuners for two-stroke engines. Let's put them in head-to-head in a shootout and let's keep the specs as close as we possibly can. So they all have FMF pipes and silencers. They all got Hoosier tires. They all got Fast Company Flex handlebars, gut seat covers. They're all KTMs across the board. The suspension settings are set up the same for 190-pound pro riders, and the engines are built to the tilt. We've had Jim Haseker from Haseker Racing. We got Terry Varner from Varner Engines, and we also have Twisted Development. 3 of the top engine builders for two-strokes, and we got a lot of two-stroke experience put into these motorcycles. I'm excited to ride them. We got Paris Raceway rented out all to ourselves today. We got 5 different test riders who are going to be spinning laps on these bikes, and we're excited to see which bike takes the cake as the fastest and the best KTM 150 two-stroke we have today. The man, the myth, the legend behind the two-stroke revolution here in Southern California. We got 3 of your KTM 125s, all owned by you, all with parts from companies that sponsor you and support you. What bike do you think is going to do the best?
Wow, that's been the question for a few months now. It was a long, hard battle getting these 3 bikes ready in time. We had a couple of issues. Getting 1 bike dialed in is hard enough. Imagine doing 3. Yeah. What I had come up with is that there's been a lot of shootouts where bikes go against each other by different builders and even different brands. I can't remember a shootout where it was exactly the same bike going against exactly the same bike. NASCAR has this thing where you can build everything that you want as long as it's got a restrictor plate. I don't want to use the word restrictor plate in any of these builds because none of it is restricting, but all the engine builders had to stay to a specific dimension, which means everybody uses the same pipes, the same silencers, the same carburetor, the same clutch, the same intake, the same head, the same gear ratios, the same chain, the same tires, the same seat, the same handlebars. Basically, they're my bikes and they're built for me with what I ride with. So it's 3 of identical bikes, and then the engines are the one that make the difference. And so I went to the engine builders and I said, let's build the best engine you can. And it was fantastic because the 3 engine builders were extremely excited to get the best of these guys have to offer is already hard enough, and I'm lucky enough to get it. It's been a little challenge, but an awesome challenge, a fun challenge with a lot of support from a lot of people, including you guys at MXA, the biggest support we have. And here we are. This is the big day, man. I hope it just it does what it's meant to do.
All right guys, when Pasha calls, you answer. Why? Because he dumps all kinds of money into two-stroke racing here in Southern California. And as MX8 test riders, I've made some money off of Pasha. All of our test riders have, and we're very thankful for that. We also were very excited for this shoot because we had 3 KTM 150 two-strokes with all same parameters. They're all 3 KTM 150s. They got 3 different engine tuners building these bikes, but all the same carburetors, all the same FMF pipe and silencer, all the same Hoosier tires, P3 carbon littered all throughout each bike, and the same final drive gear ratio. Pasha did his very, very best to keep the same specs across the board on these bikes. Brian Medeiros, Ezra Lewis, and myself were out there today. Unfortunately, Brian got hurt. He twisted his knee going all out for our cameras. So thanks to Brian for giving his best effort. I had to fill in, that's why you can tell. Part of the video, the rider on the Haseker bike was short, and the second half, the rider was taller, but here we are. We made it to the end of the day. The results are in. I did a lap time battle on all 3 bikes. But before I share the results of the lap times, let me get into each bike individually. First up, we have the Terry Varner built KTM 150 two-stroke. Varner is known for building screamers, and he's also known for building them right to the tilt. Pasha has personally blown up Terry Varner engines because Varner does not leave any stone unturned, and he goes all out with his bikes. Made it all day, so we can't knock the durability on it. Terry Varner did a great job with this engine. Obviously, it looks beautiful. It's got some titanium bolts on it. It's got the FCP engine mounts, Dubya wheels, and obviously my favorite, the Guts wing seat cover right here. Varner's bike was very, very impressive. I started out the day on this bike, shot all the photos and videos on this bike, and I was very impressed with the power. It was smooth in the bottom end, and it pulled. Personally, my favorite power band of the day had to be this Varner built engine. However, when it came down to the results of the lap time and the opinions of the other test riders, this bike ranked 3rd on the lap time scale. That's right, it got a 1:55.24. Good lap time, but it's the end of the day. Track was slick. We thank Paris Raceway for offering a great track for us today, and we told them don't water it. We have a lot of fun riding two-strokes on some dry slick stuff where we can kick out the rear wheel just a little bit easier. It was the slowest bike of the day for lap time wise, but we'll get into that with these next 2 bikes because it was not very far off. It was very, very close. Next up, we have the Jim Haseker built Pasha KTM 150 two-stroke. very impressed and very thankful that Jim flew all the way from Northern California. He was up at 3 a.m. today. He got to the track here at 9 a.m. and now it's 6:30 p.m. The sun's going down. We kept him for a full MXA test day. We gave him a full MXA experience where we're here from sun up to sundown, testing these bikes, doing our very best. The same gut seat cover, the awesome P3 carbon fuel tank, the flex handlebars. This bike came with N2 dirt suspension, and out of the group, this was actually the softest suspension of the day, and we had a few crashes on it. Ezra Lewis, he tucked the front end. Brian Medeiros, unfortunately, this is the one that took him out for the day. Rusty Holland, he was one of our test riders today as well, and he tucked the front end on this bike today. So it's not a knock on N2 dirt suspension because they built the suspension for Pasha. Pasha's a little bit heavier, but he's also a little bit slower, so he needs it softer, more supple. The soft suspension compared working together with the flex handlebars was not the best handling bike of the day. I would say this bike finished third in the handling department. But now let's talk about the most exciting part of the video, the engine. The Haseker built engine, like I mentioned already in our previous episodes and at the top of the video, Haseker has built Jared Stanky's engine, and Stank Dog has done well on 125 two-strokes in Supercross and at the Nationals. This bike was extremely fast. It didn't have the bottom end that the Varner built bike had, but once you got into the mid-range, once you got into the top end, this thing absolutely screamed. All of our test riders had fun on this bike, and they admitted that easy to ride, but not as easy as the other two motorcycles. The bottom end lacked just a little bit. Once we turned that power valve in a little bit, it stayed closed longer, and that filled in the power a little bit on the bottom end. So this was the bike that I got second fastest lap time. The lap times were very, very close. 155.24 on the Varner built bike, 155.09, just a hair faster on this Jim Haseker built engine. And yes, that means that the Twisted Development KTM 150 got the fastest lap time of the day. Now this bike, I gotta say, it's probably the coolest looking bike. The frame was sandblasted. We have black frame on the Varner bike, orange frame on the Haseker bike. This Twisted Development bike, sandblasted on the frame and then clear coated on top of it. So it's got that raw metallic look. The radiators are Cerakoted. Even the radiator cap is Cerakoted black. So lots of exotic parts on this bike. And this one has AEO suspension. If you guys watched our previous episode, you'd know that this bike had a little struggle and we actually had a shock blowout, but thanks to AEO, they got here quickly, rebuilt the shock for us, and we were back up and running. But this bike was the fastest overall of the day. What do you guys think? Was it a lot faster or just a little? Barely any faster. This bike came in at a 154.79. Not even a half a second separated all three bikes today, but I didn't tell you how the engine worked. This bike was the easiest to ride. It didn't have the top end power that either of those two bikes. I gotta admit, all of our test riders thought that those had more top end power, but the Twisted Development bike was the easiest ride on the bottom end, the smoothest and just easiest to connect the dots throughout the corners. Kurt Nicole, he's got a lot of experience doing R&D testing for KTM. He rode all three bikes today and he agreed that the Twisted Development bike was the best bike of the bunch. I didn't even get to ride this bike very much because I had shock issues and I was spending so much time on the other two models. I went out there and I beat those bikes by just a hair. It's the end of the day. The track's dry, but the lap time was still very close on all three bikes. long story short, we had a blast testing Pasha's KTM 150 two-strokes. Thank you guys for tuning into this video. Thank you for Paris for providing a great track today. Yes, it was dusty, but we told them to hold off on the water. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys like this shootout video and you haven't seen our previous episodes where we do single bike videos, be sure to check out those episodes as we go a little more in depth about each builder and about each bike. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks to Pasha for putting this all together, and thanks to Pasha's sponsors for littering these bikes with some exotic parts. Good times. Thanks for watching.